With the kind permission of the Honorable Prime Minister, we shall now commence the program. I would first like to request His Excellency Mohammad Shahabuddin MP, Honorable Minister, Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, to kindly deliver his welcome remarks.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. His Excellency Sheikh Hasina, Honorable Prime Minister of the Government of People's Republic of Bangladesh, His Excellency Mr. Ban Ki-moon, UN Secretary General of the UN and Chair of the GCA Board, His Excellency Dr. A.K. Abdul Momen, Honorable Foreign Minister of Bangladesh, Professor Dr. Patrick Parkwijan, CEO, GCA, His Excellency Robert Chatterson, UK High Commissioner in Bangladesh, Excellency and distinguished participants, Assalamu alaikum and very good morning to you all. Even it gives me a great pleasure to welcome you all the launching event of Global Hub on Locally Led Adaptation. Since launch of the Global Center on Adaptation, South Asia Regional Office in Bangladesh on 8 September 2022 by Her Excellency Sheikh Hasina, Honorable Prime Minister of Bangladesh, and His Excellency Ban Ki-moon, Chair of the GCA Board. GCA is closely working with my Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, and other LLA practitioners in Bangladesh and around the world to conceptualize the activities of Global Hub on LLA. Distinguished guests, as you are aware, Bangladesh is recognized as the champion of community-based adaptation. Most of our adaptation initiatives are focused towards enhancing and resilience of the local communities. Today, Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, in collaboration with Global Center on Adaptation, is going to launch the Global Hub on Locally Led Adaptation. This is in line with the adaptation aid principle for locally led adaptation, which was agreed during the Climate Adaptation Summit in 2021. Excellency, in line with UNFCCC processes, Bangladesh has submitted the National Adaptation Plan to UNFCCC on 31st October, and we have considered locally led adaptation with due importance in our National Adaptation Plan. I would like to share at the sideline of COP27, Global Commission on Adaptation has already started recognizing a rewarding, innovative, locally and led adaptation solution. I had the opportunity to participate at the 2022 GCA Locally Led Adaptation Champions Award giving ceremony. This year, Bangladesh, India, Nepal, and Kenya got the 2022 awards. Excellency, I would like to convey our sincere gratitude to the Honorable Prime Minister and to Mr. Ban Ki-moon for their support for the establishment of the Global Hub on Locally Led Adaptation in Bangladesh. The GCA Regional Office and the Global Hub is hosted by the Department of Environment of my ministry in Dhaka. In this context, we would like to thank the contribution of the government of UK for the establishment of the Global Hub. We hope through the center, we shall be able to share the best locally led adaptation practices of the region with the rest of the world. We would like to see this global hub transforms as a global center of excellence for locally led adaptation. We assure the full support of my Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change towards that goal. Finally, let me convey my sincere appreciation to the Honorable Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina and Mr. Ban Ki-moon for their kind presence. Let me also convey my thanks to others for making this event a success. Thank you all. Jai Bangla, Jai Bangabandhu.
Thank you, Excellency, for your kind welcome remarks. May I now invite His Excellency Robert Chatterton Dixon, British High Commissioner to Bangladesh, to kindly deliver his remarks.
Thank you. Well, good morning, Honourable Prime Minister, Honourable Foreign Minister, Honourable former Secretary General, and others. It's a great pleasure and privilege to be with you this morning at the launch of the Global Hub on Locally Led Adaptation. We all know that the climate emergency is an acute crisis, as we've seen in 2022, from floods in Bangladesh and Pakistan to droughts and record temperatures in the UK and Europe. And as well as the mitigation discussed at COP27, we need adaptation. Communities in the front line of climate change impacts are the best places to find practical solutions to the impacts of climate change. And that's why the GCA has initiated the Local Adaptation Champion Awards to shine a spotlight on some of these communities around the world leading in their own resilience. And the British High Commission in Dhaka, under the new Climate and Environment Programme, is delighted to support the GCA's work here in Bangladesh. And we're delighted that one of the first of the global winners of the Local Adaptation Champion Awards was right here in Bangladesh. In Rangamati, the Hill District Council received an award for their project, which worked collectively to set up a solar power-based safe water supply facility and the provision of safe drinking water. And they also established a village community forest, which had a remarkable effect on the wider availability of water, both for irrigation and for drinking. The combined effect was a huge improvement in the lives of the community, especially of the women. And as a visitor to this program just last month, it was wonderful to see this example of locally led adaptation in practice. More widely, the funding that the UK is providing is contributing to scaling up locally led adaptation through awareness raising and sharing best practice and integrating them into development and climate change, sharing good practice from all the work that has been supported in Bangladesh over many years. This is a key role for the Global Hub, to leverage global discussions and existing adaptation research and learning initiatives to facilitate peer exchange, collaboration, and mobilizing resources, which in turn will lead to more scaling and replication of best approaches. A true virtuous circle. And Bangladesh is especially well placed to lead and host the hub as a pioneer in this locally led adaptation and knowledge exchange. As we've seen with previous examples, including the Gobashana conference started here in Bangladesh, and now a global platform for climate research. And we hope that the hub will build on this track record and bring the GCA's global reach and expertise in brokering solutions to scale up planning, investment, and action. So in this time of growing climate impact, it is more important than ever that governments, development partners, and other relevant actors can draw on all of these approaches to turn investments in and commitments to locally led adaptation into new practices and actions that ensure local partners have equitable access to climate finance and are at the center of decision-making processes. At the core of this must be real connection with local issues and local communities. And that is what we hope this new hub will deliver. I'm delighted to be here this morning. Thank you. Onek Donabad.
Thank you, Excellency, for your kind remarks. May I now request today's special guest, His Excellency Ban Ki-moon, 8th Secretary General of the United Nations and Chair of the Board, Global Center on Adaptation, to kindly deliver his remarks.
Your Excellency, Prime Minister Hasina of Bangladesh, Honorable Ministers of Foreign Affairs and Environment of Bangladesh, Excellency Robert Chatterton Dixon, UK High Commissioner in Bangladesh, Dr. Patrick Vercoyen, CEO of Global Center on Adaptation, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us today. Assalamu alaikum. I wish I could be there in person. Bangladesh retains a special place in my heart since 1973, when I served as a Korean diplomat accredited to Bangladesh. In that regard, it is a great honor for me to work with the leadership and people of Bangladesh on very important issues on adaptation, climate adaptation. It is a very positive contribution to the international community, the strength of its leadership and the hospitality of her people. It is heartening to be joined today by members of the media from Bangladesh and other foreign media, because also the world's media may have moved on from the subject since the UN Climate Summit, COP27, which was held in Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt. Climate change is still impacting millions of lives around the world. The need to act is urgent. It is perhaps too soon to judge the significance of the outcomes of COP27. The historic decision at COP27 to establish a fund to address climate-related loss and damage is a huge step forward towards climate justice, but it is not enough. It is also a tragic indication that we are not doing enough to protect communities around the world. The whole world, and developed countries in particular, must double down and increase their commitment to keep the Paris goal of 1.5 degrees Celsius warming alive. Every fraction of a degree has an outsized impact on millions of lives, and no fund will ever be large enough to address the loss and damage caused if we do not live up to the pledges made to limit and adapt to the impacts of climate change. Ladies and gentlemen, the loss and damage was raised the first time 30 years ago. Only 30 years after, we have made an agreement. But most important thing is how you can implement this promise. I hope this loss and damage will not take another 30 years. It must be taken as quickly as possible. Ladies and gentlemen, there is no time to waste. and there are no excuses left. Solutions exist. We know how to grow crops despite more salty water, to safeguard communities from extreme weather, and to protect our cities from rising sea levels and higher temperatures. There is no better teacher on climate adaptation than Bangladesh. Let me give you one example. Bangladesh has been preparing for the onslaught of fiercer and more frequent tropical cyclones that global warming is bringing. The way Bangladesh does this, holding valuable lessons for vulnerable coastal communities all over the world. Under the able leadership of Honorable Prime Minister Hasina of Bangladesh, Bangladesh has taken a global leadership role in making the case on the climate, and in particular, the power of adaptation. The leadership of the Climate Vulnerable Forum, CVF, has inserted the voices of frontline communities at the highest levels of international policymaking. And your strong national leadership at home, with the development of the Mujib Climate Prosperity Plan and National Adaptation Plan, will further empower local communities to combat the impacts of our warming world. Because it is the poorest on the front lines of climate change who suffer the most harm, and local communities know best how to identify and implement the solutions to fit their local needs. At the Global Center on Adaptation, we are proud to partner with the Bangladeshi government and local partners in this mission, safeguarding lives and creating economic opportunities as the world transitions to a more sustainable and resilient future. I would like to express my deepest appreciation to Her Excellency Prime Minister Hasina for hosting the GCA Regional Office for South Asia in Dhaka. And to the Honorable Foreign Minister, His Excellency Dr. Momen, for his contribution as a member of GCA support. There is no such expertise and understanding Bangladesh has to share with the world. There is so much expertise that you can share with other people. GCA's work in Bangladesh will do exactly this, while also mobilizing expertise and finance and bringing forth the latest cutting-edge adaptation evidence and innovation. This is why the Global Hub being launched today in Bangladesh is so important. It embodies the approach of integrating global best practice into ongoing adaptation efforts in Bangladesh and across the region, while also sharing Bangladesh's expertise with the world. And it represents the importance of taking action with and for local communities. It is for them we are here today, and it is for them that the Global Hub represents an invaluable asset to build a better world. Ladies and gentlemen, let us work together to realize a better world for all through climate adaptation action. Thank you very much for your leadership, and Jai Bangla, Jai Bangla. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Excellency, for your kind deliberation. I would now like to request Professor Dr. Patrick Vercoen, Chief Executive Officer, Global Center on Adaptation, to deliver the keynote address.
We are all Bangladeshi. Why? Because the climate breakdown in Bangladesh will be the climate catastrophe for the rest of the world. My name is Patrick Vercoen, I'm the CEO of the Global Center on Adaptation indeed. And we have to do something to stop this, because Bangladesh Bangladesh is ground zero of the climate crisis. And it is that crisis at the beating heart of our communities, the women and girls who are most vulnerable to our existential challenge. But ladies and gentlemen, we must not be overwhelmed by the enormity of this crisis. I'm here today because I know the real story on climate change in Bangladesh is not a story of disaster or destruction. No, it's as I saw with Secretary General Ban Ki-moon when we came here last time in the middle of 2019, the story of Bangladesh and climate change is a story of resilience. It's a story of responsibility. It's a story of opportunities for a safer, greener, more prosperous country. If ever there was a time to invest in adaptation, it is now. Adaptation is unstoppable, and with it, Bangladesh is unstoppable. And no one represents this unstoppable spirit of this country more than you, Honorable Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. If action speaks louder than words, then we all can take inspiration from you, Honorable Prime Minister, to give voice to the voiceless. We can take inspiration from your leadership to ensure women and girls are at the center of our fight against climate change. Because the world may be locked into a pattern of global climate crisis, recovering from a COVID crisis, the conflict in Ukraine driving a food and fuel crisis, a global debt crisis, but looming above all, this climate crisis as the climate emergency, a crisis that will not wait. And under your leadership, Honorable Prime Minister, Bangladesh has not been waiting. Millions of lives have been saved because people and communities are now better prepared to respond to climate disaster. Because of the leadership you provide, Honorable Prime Minister, for a prosperous and resilient future. Your Excellency, as the Global Center on Adaptation, as chaired by the Honorable Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, we are proud to walk alongside you and the people of Bangladesh to make the transition to this climate resilient society swiftly and effectively. It is with your bold vision, Honorable Prime Minister, that we launched GCA's regional office here in Dhaka, indeed. And as the managing partner of the Climate Vulnerable Forum, as we have developed under your leadership the first climate prosperity plan. The Mujib Climate Prosperity Plan is a source of inspiration for the rest of the world on transforming climate action into action for jobs, action for growth, action for prosperity. And through our programs on the ground, we're working with your government to ensure the nation's infrastructure, the roads and bridges that connect us, is protected against climate change, so that when the rains come, as the floodwaters rise, your families will still be able to go to work, students will not be left out of school, and a pregnant mother will still be able to go to the hospital. So, Your Excellency, Honorable Prime Minister, together with your government, we are today harnessing the force of nature to protect 22 coastal towns through a $300 million investment program for our partners at the Asian Development Bank. We're bringing the private sector to the table to finance Bangladesh's adaptation agenda through climate resilient public-private partnerships. And Your Excellency, today indeed marks a path-breaking milestone for our deep collaboration. A milestone that fulfills a promise that I made to you, Madam Prime Minister, 2 years ago, when you called on GCA to amplify the success and the experience of Bangladesh on building the climate resilience of the most vulnerable communities. We're here today to realize your vision, to transform how the world adapts to the climate emergency, to put people at the center of adaptation action. The Global Hub on Locally Led Adaptation turns words into action. So what is this Global Hub? What is success on a Monday morning, actually on a Sunday morning? It is about empowering local communities. It is about unleashing the creativity of communities to come up with solutions that work for them. It is about communities, civil society, and government working hand in hand to implement locally led people's plans for building climate resilience. It is about giving voice to local communities. So, Your Excellency, Robert Dixon, I thank you, sir. I thank you profoundly for the United Kingdom's support for our work to transform the lives of over 1 million vulnerable climate migrants here in Bangladesh that are leaving their homes, their heritage, and their hopes as they move to find lives and livelihoods in cities like Mongla because of the climate crisis. And with your government's investments in GCA, with the UK's government's investments, sir, we work alongside the urban poor in Mongla and 26 other secondary cities in Bangladesh to turn their journey of loss into an opportunity and to build resilience in the face of climate adversity. Honorable Prime Minister, honorable ministers, Bangladesh is a trailblazer. Bangladesh is a trailblazer in developing new approaches that address the needs of communities living on the front lines. Needs that cannot be met by the traditional urban development approach. So this global hub will anchor Bangladesh as the center of innovation, as the center of excellence on adaptation excellence, transforming, transferring, and scaling solutions that will uphold society. Because what happens in Bangladesh cannot and must not stay in Bangladesh. Your solutions will transform the lives of the urban poor across the globe. And the Global Hub is already improving the lives of the urban poor, not just in Bangladesh. Take Africa through the GCA's $25 billion Africa Adaptation Acceleration Program, the AAAP. Today, this is the largest adaptation investment program in the world. So as the climate change and as the climate crisis intensifies, so should the scale and the speed of the response. So, Honorable Prime Minister, in return, let us commit to joining forces to bring the boldness, the impact, and the delivery mechanisms of this African Adaptation Acceleration Program, or the AAAP, to those living in the eye of the storm in South Asia. Honorable Prime Minister, Your Excellency, I am determined. I am committed. I am confident because of the extraordinary leadership this country provides. Bangladesh is leading an adaptation awakening on the ground that leaves no home unprotected, no business unprepared, no community exposed, out of harm's way. We can do it. We are doing it. Why? Because we're all Bangladeshi in this crisis. I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Patrick, for your kind address. Now, I would like to invite His Excellency Dr. A.K. Abdul Momen MP, Honorable Foreign Minister, Government of the People's Republic of Bangladesh, to kindly deliver his remarks for today's event.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Honorable Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina of the People's Government of the People's Republic of Bangladesh, His Excellency Ban Ki-moon, 8th Secretary General of the United Nations and the Chair of the Board of GCA, Honorable Minister Muhammad Shahabuddin MP, Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, Bangladesh, Professor Dr. Patrick Barkosian, CEO of the Global Center on Adaptation, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. Assalamu alaikum, peace be upon you all. It is a great pleasure to be present at the launching event of the Global Hub on Locally Led Adaptation. I thank the Global Center Adaptation for hosting this hub in Bangladesh. I also thank the government of the United Kingdom for its support to establish this global fund. I hope following UK, other countries and institutions will come forward with generous funding. Climate change is a reality now. Its adverse impacts are severely felt by the poor and marginalized people of the developing countries, especially of the climate vulnerable countries like Bangladesh. They are more vulnerable because they have resource constraints and limited capacity to cope with climate crises. Hence, the solution requires global cooperation for large-scale and comprehensive adaptation measures. Today's inauguration of GCA's Global Hub on Locally Led Adaptation in Dhaka marks a historic milestone towards the global collective action. Excellencies, climate change is reshaping our world through direct environmental, social, political, and economic impacts. We are experiencing erratic climatic changes, excessive floods, rainfall, cyclones, heat waves, landslides, and droughts in recent years with unprecedented space and scale. We must also give increased focus on climate-induced human mobility as an adaptive measure. Each year, more than 650,000 people of Bangladesh are being uprooted from their sweet homes, from their traditional jobs due to erratic climatic changes and global warming and river erosion. And government has the responsibility to help rehabilitate them, although government has no role in contributing to their uprooting. And therefore, this process has been continuing and intensifying. There are varieties of estimates that tells that around when 20% of the coastal areas of Bangladesh should be flooded, then there could be millions of people, they will be uprooted from their homes. If millions of people are uprooted from their homes, it will create a global security problem. Therefore, before such situation happens, I would request the global leaders to come forward to share the burden of their rehabilitation and also take corrective action so that that situation never happens. Excellencies, while we welcome the initiative of a new funding mechanism for loss and damage in COP27, we would urge the international community to operationalize this fund as early as possible for creating additional financing mechanisms to address climate-induced migration. I would also request GCA to give additional attention to this issue, including to this global hub on locally led adaptation. Bangladesh believes that community-driven efforts are more effective to respond to climate risks as they are targeted to local needs and priorities. Despite being one of the most climate vulnerable countries, Bangladesh stands top in pioneering the climate adaptation efforts. We are one of the first countries to utilize the value of indigenous knowledge and experience to address climate change. Over the last few years, under the leadership of Honorable Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, Bangladesh has emerged as a global leader in locally led actions. We have incorporated locally led adaptation in the Bangladesh Climate Change Strategy and Action Plan, Mujib Climate Prosperity Plan, Bangladesh Delta Plan 2100, and in the latest National Adaptation Plan. In consonance with our Honorable Prime Minister's vision, we are shifting from climate vulnerability to resilience and resilience to prosperity. Excellencies, our journey with GCA is promising and progressing. It pleases me to witness that over a span of just 2 years, GCA and Bangladesh government have developed the adaptation activities and finally really ready to launch the global hub on locally led adaptation today. I would like to thank GCA for launching the first international award during COP27 in Sharm el-Sheikh in November to highlight and reward locally led efforts to address climate change and build resilience among vulnerable communities. Through this event, I would also like to congratulate Rangamati Hill District Council for winning award in appreciation of their work on inclusive leadership. Its collaboration with local communities to fight against droughts, landslides, and floods through solar power-based safe water supply facilities demonstrated the power of locally led solutions of Bangladeshi native method. I believe that our local government institution can take forward some of the good practices we see in the different parts of the country to other comparable settings. Bangladesh is ready to share similar homegrown solutions such as floating agriculture, rainwater harvesting, early warning system, climate-resistant crop varieties with other vulnerable countries through this global hub. In parallel with government-led initiatives, we need the GCA hub to promote efforts, but private investors to come forward to bridge the existing investment gap in climate change adaptation. We request GCA to remain engaged with the adaptation investments by multilateral development banks, financial institutions, investors, and climate funds. We also need to identify the innovative solutions being developed by our growing startup scene and support these initiatives with suitable investment and policy support. I would like to urge the international community to scale up financial and technological support for the developing countries to cope with the adverse impacts of climate change. The ongoing Ukraine war and the resulting cost of living crisis around the world, aggravated by sanctions and sanctions, cannot be a pretext for diminishing or diverting much needed financing for tackling the climate crisis in order to save this planet Earth. Ladies and gentlemen, our government stands ready to provide full support to GCA to achieve the goal of the global hub, which is to promote locally led adaptation at scale with speed to reduce climate risks for populations and sections of society that are most vulnerable to climate change. The kind presence of Honorable Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina at this launch event is clear testimony to our unstinking support. Before closing, I would like to congratulate His Excellency Ban Ki-moon and the entire GCA team once again. I feel personally pleased to be able to serve as a member of the GCA governing body. The launch of the Global Hub today is indeed a positive step forward from our decision to host a GCA regional office in Dhaka. Soon we plan to organize other events. I wish the Global Hub on locally led adaptation all success. Thank you all. Joy Bangla, Joy Bangabandhu.
Thank you, Honorable Foreign Minister. Now, I would like to invite you all to watch an audiovisual on the Global Hub on Locally Led Adaptation.
Droughts, floods, heat waves. Climate change impacts are felt the most by the poor and marginalized. But the most vulnerable communities are not just victims of climate change, they're also active agents of change.
Local people are the ones who are suffering the problem and are much more able to identify what needs to be done.
How do you create a set of common principles that make us hold hands together rather than some of us being on top of the trees and some of us being the roots?
When empowered and enabled, local leaders use their knowledge and understanding of what their community needs to realize effective and sustainable adaptation solutions. Recognizing the importance of enabling local action and building on consultations with partners around the world, the Global Center on Adaptation established the Global Hub on Locally Led Adaptation or LLA, located in GCA's office in Dhaka, Bangladesh, leveraging the country's global leadership in this agenda. The Global Hub on LLA also has an online presence to connect communities and practitioners worldwide.
We are promoting locally led adaptation that can bring forth tangible solution for the vulnerable communities in different countries of the world.
How do we connect these local communities who know what the problems are and the solutions are to where the big money is?
The Global Hub on LLA aims to bring together knowledge, influence investments by development partners to scale up action, advocate for supportive policies, build the capacity of national and local actors, and improve access to patient and predictable funding. Welcome to the Global Hub on Locally Led Adaptation.
Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Now, I would like to invite today's chief guest, Her Excellency Sheikh Hasina, Honorable Prime Minister, Government of the People's Republic of Bangladesh, to kindly deliver her remarks and launch the Global Hub on Locally Led Adaptation.
Thank you. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. His Excellency Mr. Ban Ki-moon, Chair of GCA Board, distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum and a very good morning to you all. I am happy that Bangladesh has been chosen as the host of the Global Hub on Locally Led Adaptation. I thank the Global Center on Adaptation GCA for this recognition. I also appreciate the United Kingdom's support for the initiative. Ladies and gentlemen, the people of Bangladesh have been living with natural calamities for ages. They have attained some sort of resilience against flood, tidal surge, cyclone, and other hazards. They have learned to adapt to the changing courses of nature. Their collective efforts have turned Bangladesh into a climate adaptation hub. Father of the nation, Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman had started faith in our people's resilience. He had witnessed the untold suffering of our people after the Bola cyclone in 1970. Over 10 million people are affected and many of them are died in the devastating calamity. And then Pakistani rulers did not come forward to help people with rescue and relief operation. Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujib protested their negligence towards the cyclone victims. He himself, with the help of Awami League leaders and workers and the local people, had carried out extensive relief and rescue operation for weeks. After independence, Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujib took initiatives to protect the coastal belt from cyclones. He had started establishing cyclone shelter, which were locally called Mujib Killa. He also launched the Cyclone Preparedness Program, CPP, along with planting trees. CPP now compromises more than 76,000 volunteers. We are still following his guidance for planning our climate action. Distinguished guests, our local communities have their traditional knowledge and solution for climate adaptation. Our government supports those solutions with resources and innovations. This combination has served us well in developing a pool of bankable locally led adaptation measures. We have now built cyclone and flood shelters across the country to shelter people, domestic and domestic animals. These shelters also continues through active community participation. My party, Bangladesh Awami League leaders and workers plant millions of saplings every year during the monsoon. Since 1985, we started this program. Artificial mangrove forests are being created at the shores of the Bay of Bengal. On the occasion of the Mujib Birth Centenary, we have set up 100 Mujib Killas. Modern technologies are helping it reach weather forecast and warning to the remote areas, including the deep sea. Bangladesh is now considered as a role model in disaster risk reduction. We have developed saline, drought, and flood-tolerant crop varieties. Floating agriculture is now widely practiced for vegetable production. Many innovative methods are being adapted for climate-smart fisheries and livestock rearing. Emphasis is being given on mechanization in agriculture. We are encouraging rooftop cultivation for food production and heat reduction. Our water management efforts are also guided by our people's age-old coexistence with rivers. In Bangladesh, we recognize our rivers to be living entities. We have started dredging our rivers to increase their navigability and water retention capacity. We have made easy access to safe drinking water for people of coastal area. We are promoting adaptation of renewable energy for irrigation purposes and households. We have the world's largest solar home system. Our urban planning is also helping in climate adaptation in many ways. I have given instruction for rainwater harvesting in our new public sector buildings. We look forward to increased investment in solid waste management through community participation. Our health system are dealing with certain tropical diseases aggravated by climate change. It would be difficult to contain disease like dengue or without a whole of society approach. Our people have long been using migration as an adaptive response to climate impacts. We need to give priority to both preventing and managing increased human mobility due to climate change. Under our flagship program, Ashrayam, we have built about 1 million semi-paka disaster-tolerant houses for the homeless people, homeless and landless. The world's biggest multi-storied housing project for climate migrants is being built at Krushkul in Cox's Bazar. During the cyclone in 1991, 5,000 people migrated from different islands in Cox's Bazar. Now we are rehabilitating them in the Krushkul, that means Cox's Bazar, and we have already we have created accommodation for 5,000 people. We are building multi-story building, already 139 multi-story building we build up and rehabilitated many people. Rest of them will also be rehabilitated there. And they are not only the housing, also we ensure their livelihood. Ladies and gentlemen, our government now spends 6 to 7% of our GDP for climate adaptation. We have recently launched the National Adaptation Plan for 2023 to 2050. We set up a climate change trust fund back in 2009 with our own resources. That's after COP15. Then we have established this climate change trust fund with our own money. The fund has so far implemented 800 projects for both climate adaptation and mitigation. We shall need 230 billion US dollar for implementing our NAP from both domestic and international resources. Bangladesh continues to seek a 50-50 distribution between adaptation and mitigation from international climate financing. Our NAP will complement the work being done under our Bangladesh Delta Plan 2100 and Mujib Climate Prosperity Plan. I invite our partners from the international public and private sectors to join us in this effort in the spirit of the Paris Agreement. In parallel, we call upon all major carbon emitting countries to further enhance the scope of their nationally determined contributions. We must all redouble our efforts to keep the global warming limited to 1.5 centigrade. Our government will extend all possible support to Global Hub on locally led adaptation being launched today. We are pleased to have this as yet another offering from Bangladesh for the climate vulnerable people around the world. We look forward to seeing the GCA regional office in Dhaka emerge as a center of excellence for the region and beyond. I thank you all. Joy Bangla, Joy Bangabandhu. Now, I hereby declare the Global Hub locally led adaptation open.
We sincerely thank you, Honorable Prime Minister, for your kind remarks and for launching the Global Hub on locally led adaptation. Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, this brings us to the end of the launching event of the Global Hub on locally led adaptation. On behalf of the Government of Bangladesh and the Global Center on Adaptation, I would like to thank you all for being with us today and enriching this event. Thank you all again.